Hello guys, my name is Sparkfinger and welcome to the second video talking about the AI dungeon controversy. If you want to find out more, I strongly suggest you watch the first one. First of all, once again, let's reiterate. What is AI dungeon? AI dungeon is an AI-powered text game that allows you to write your own stories. Basically, it serves you like a dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons games. Or you can just use it to write stories, or you can simply use it as a writing tool. Pretty immense. It's really a futuristic game. It's nothing like this would have been even thought of 5 years ago. And because of that, a lot of people realized that this game can be used for really all sorts of means. This game can allow you to write a story about anything. A lot of people decided to use it to, write sexual stories, involving all sorts of kinks. And because of that, at some point, AI Dungeon sort of developed a reputation amongst its own players as a game with a lot of sexual content. And a few days ago, on 27th of April, Latitude AI Dungeon developers team posted a new community update where they talked about the implementation of a new filter. A new filter which will supposedly allow the AI Dungeon engine to detect any sort of sexual scenarios that involve minors. However, the community reaction to this was, mostly negative, because now the AI Dungeon developers team said that they will be reading the stories if the filter detects anything. They openly came out with the fact that they read user stories. And most people were outraged, because guess what? Most people these days are simply not going to stand for censorship, any kind of violation of liberty and freedom of speech, as well as privacy. It's not about pornography and perverse situations anymore. It's not even about censorship, it's more about freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of thought. Most people decided to not support AI Dungeon developers simply because they think that Latitude opposes the whole idea of freedom of speech. Now to the next part. A few days, in fact, a few dozen hours after the controversy started, AI Dungeon developers Latitude removed links to all the social sites, to Discord and Reddit. They used to be here. Now it's all gone and empty. Simply trying to cover their tracks, which is how we come to the next point of this video, is how big companies control their PR damage. It's a sad fact, but quite often when a big company has to face a controversy, number one solution to it is simply to ignore everyone and everything. You'd be surprised how many controversies were swept right under the rug, simply because the big corporations chose to ignore everyone and everything, wait for things to calm down. And sadly, things do calm down. People do forget about things. You'd think someone like Jeffrey Epstein, something would happen because of Jeffrey Epstein's murder, but no. Nothing was found, nobody was incarcerated, there was no investigation. People were not satisfied. Same as here. This company, this corporation, is simply going to ignore everything. And this is a number one PR way to, solve PR crises, right? Sad but true. Most companies choose not to react to people when they go outraged and try to cancel big companies. Now to the next point. In this next part, I wanted to cover some really insightful comments that I was given on my previous video detailing the basics of this controversy. So this is a Reddit video. Let's read some of the comments. First of all, I have to say big thanks, massive thanks to everyone that participated and provided me with information. Big thanks to the user Aaron1117. Let's read his post on the data breach. Here's what I know about the data breach, and I've looked into it extensively. There, some guy front-loaded the AI and was able to download everybody's stories from all the way back to 2019. I believe that, but that part's kind of vague. He swears he deleted the data and immediately told to the AI Dungeon developers about the vulnerability. And after some time they said they had fixed it. However, that same person was able to do it again, use pretty much the same exact methods. This time it took him several attempts reaching out to get them to respond and put in a fix. Just like many hackers do, I have to say. Many hackers quite often have good intentions. They simply try and probe the game to test their own skill. Games, apps, all sorts of companies, they simply probe the code to see if they can break it. They don't often want to break it, they don't often want to steal the information, they just want to test their own skills and in fact help the companies that suffer from data vulnerabilities. But this time it took them several attempts, right? This was just as bad as the first and we don't know if they ever fixed it for the third time. Now this brings up several questions. Did the data contain payment information and emails? Most probably not, but it's not confirmed information. We can't know if it did or did not. Did he really delete everything? And even if he did, nothing is really ever deleted. I have to agree, most things never really disappear from the internet. However, somehow this particular guy, I do believe he was benevolent and he is not planning to upload any of the stories to the dark net where he can sell it. Sell it so people can be, bribed, manipulated, extorted, blackmailed. How many people saw this public post about it and now he did it the same? Yes, apparently it's a very simple JavaScript because the game isn't really that complicated on a formal level, if I say so myself, not that I know a lot. AI Dungeon is breaking several laws, not revealing the leak after the second day. They were aware of the possibility of the break, and in my personal opinion, do believe it's worth at least a mention in your next video. That's a quote from Aaron1117. So yes, I mentioned it in the comment and in the description of my video, and here is some more things. If you want, you can read it. This is all quite important. And here's another very insightful comment. My personal conspiracy theory is that they actually have no evidence to back it up with. I mean, they are planning to sell the company or take an actual public investor and they want the app to look all nice and clean. We will be getting to this next part later. We will see exactly what kind of actions Latitude, the developers, took in order to, possibly clean up their reputation in future and how it all turned out. And there are speculations that there is some kind of monetary reason for them to, do what they did. And it does involve investors. Okay, so this is my comment asking for insight and here's another very, very insightful comment from a very active user, person that I like, Picaldeo Acidia. I speculate that this is an anime name, but it doesn't matter. Thank Picaldeo Acidio very much for this information. Once again, this is basically a Reddit video. So this is the next part. We can now find out a bit more insight regarding the 4chan trolling. To clear up some stuff about the 4chan trolling, was only one user on VG, AIDG, AI Dungeon, making scenarios for the purpose of trolling. I'll just call him RL. People who saw the incident play out will immediately know who I'm referring to. Basically, and I'm going to be simplifying some of this a bit, the Anons on VG, AIDG kinda felt like trolling the Explore me's, which is the term for those who used Explore, and we're discussing what type of content would ruffle their feathers. Oh yeah, well, they didn't really go there. They didn't go far enough, I'm gonna admit it. That they did go, well, let's keep reading it. What they decided on was incest, since AI Dungeon users very often complained about incest scenarios. There was nothing in the community guidelines to prevent incest scenarios being made, whereas stuff like bestiality and P-word likely would have been quickly removed to enforce the community guidelines. So RL was the Anon who decided to make the scenarios as part of a siege against the Explore me's. Oh yeah, sure was very funny. He also shared the first scenario with other Anons on VG, AIDG, and they quickly mass-upvoted it to get it to the top of Explorer. So see, it was never bots, like people suspected. It's not too easy to bot it. I mean, you can manually create a lot of accounts and then upvote it, but that would take a lot of time. Even with actual automation. Some people got mad about the incest, but there were actually more people get mad about suspected like botting, due to the fact that scenario gained over 50 upvotes in the first hour, which was virtually unheard of, especially for a scenario made by an obscure creator without many followers. Yeah, basically we had a really massive culture about explore and scenarios. There were great followers who created and even scripted very complex scenarios that allowed us to really, play AI Dungeon in an unusual way. Now it's all gone. And who do we thank for that? Thank in quotes, I don't know. We'll see. Basically, RL kept making incest scenarios, some of which included piece, shit, and lactation fetishism. An incest orgy scenario and one that had somewhat implied rape. People kept being mad, but they started being less mad about the content of the scenarios and more about seeing RL scenarios at the top of the Explore constantly, as well as about suspected like button. And then it came out that it was just 4chan trolling. Some people got extra mad about that, others just found it kind of funny once they realized it was a joke. I mean, I knew it was a joke from the start. Regardless, though, even after the cat was out the bag, RL kept making incest scenarios and sharing them on 4chan to get them to the top of Explore, and it just started being more annoying. I'd say much more annoying than anything. RL had to have known that people already figured it out and the joke was becoming stale, but he kept going at it. He kept doing it. Then Explore was taken down. We can't really be sure, but I once again have to speculate about the fact that it was most probably due to his actions. Whether or not Explorer's removal or the new censorship were due to 4chan trolling is debatable, and depends on whether or not you trust the devs when they say that Explorer wasn't taken down to the trolling. Bottom line, it was likely going to happen regardless, due to apparent planned censorship. I mean, I don't really believe that Latitude planned this ahead in a long time. I think this is something they came up with very recently, and this is why their filtering, feature is just so bad. It filters all your game and just breaks your game most of the time. Simply, it just stops your game from moving ahead. It just always says, the AI doesn't know anything. It doesn't know what to say. It doesn't matter what you say. I mean, it just often breaks. I think I will be making a video showcasing how bad it is, how bad the new censoring feature is, and how Latitude broke their own freaking game so hard. Sorry for the F word. Also, since 4chan wasn't using P stuff or bestiality to troll, I seriously doubt they had any influence on Latitude's decision to censor these particular types of content. My personal opinion that Explorer was the immediate closing of the Explore tab was due to this particular trolling. However, the plan to censor was something somewhat separate. Something that involved the investors as well as the plan to clean up the reputation of the company. And we all know how it went. If it were bad stuff that Latitude was censoring, I'd be safe to say that it was due to 4chan trolling, but that isn't what they were censoring. Yes, thank you. That is just the insight I was looking for. Once again, this is mostly a Reddit video. And now we move on to the next part. In this next part, we are going to look at the most curious case of emotional response from the developer. Well, from the co-founder, Alan Walton. Big thanks to user Frogging 101 and everyone who helped him. Because honestly, I wouldn't be able to rifle through Discord. Discord is really just a AI Dungeon. Discord is not an easy place to be in. I guess, well, we'll get to it. And now we're going to read some of the comments and provide an explanation to each and every one of them. Now we're going to read the comments. Here, I have to note, most of these comments were made very, very quickly after the initial community post, and now we're going to read some of them and explain them. Community reaction was mixed as expected. Basically, this is Alan admitting the fact that community reaction is 100% negative. It's mixed. That means it's not what I expected it to be. It's not what they expected it to be. Okay. So, hopefully, this next part we're gonna read. We'll have more updates on the privacy side later, focusing on the CP side today. So what that means is that we do have a reason to expect that Latitude is going to release another community post regarding privacy. Hopefully they will give us something to feel calm about. And this is just CP side, this is their broken filter that doesn't work, basically, because a lot of users, including me, report that very inappropriate scenarios that do involve miners are still quite possible in AI Dungeon. Oh god. Now for the next part. Just to be clear, we don't go looking at people's private stories unless we have to do debug specific issues, such as automated systems. Here is Alan confirming that, well, they don't read it unless their new filtering system reports your story. They don't go sifting through it. But to be fair, a lot of people report that the new filtering system will tag absolutely any of your stories for no good reason. Just for no good reason. It breaks the game, as I mentioned before. So yes, the developers are trying to debug the AI, and for that they do have to read the stories and the inputs. That means they inevitably have to violate your privacy, the privacy of your stories, if they ever do get reported. Yes, they are basically saying that they have to fix it. They want this filter to actually filter CP stuff, and rather than just break the game. Currently, it keeps just breaking the game. They cannot successfully debug it. The game is not really playable unless you're ready to re-edit everything 1,000 times in a row and waste all of your energy. So basically, this contradicts, according to some of the Reddit users, it contradicts the posts that they don't necessarily have to. Other developers said they don't necessarily have to read it, but according to Walton, they do have to read it in order to debug it. So there is a bit of a contradiction between different developers and between Alan Walton, the co-founder. I actually don't know if Alan himself is a programmer, so we're just going to refer to him as the co-founder. I'm pretty sure that he is a programmer. Let's keep reading. Yes, it's against our company values, and this is one place where I can really understand it. It shouldn't be. I mean, freedom does have to be limited to a certain degree. Absolute freedom isn't possible. When there is absolute freedom, there is no structure to human society. Well, however, when it comes to the game that promises to deliver anything to you, say that anything is possible, now they just contradict themselves. And they break their own game. They cannot actually implement a feature that actually filters the wrong, inappropriate kind of stuff. Let's keep reading. Yes, and here's all Alan is saying. The reaction surprised us. I mean, I know it. It's obvious. They clearly rushed these decisions. They didn't know what they were doing. They made a decision, and a few days later they decided to implement a filter. And now they are shocked that it broke the game, and the community is outraged. The community is mostly outraged at the privacy side of this issue. Let's keep reading. Yes, we'll use the content to improve the models, enforce policies, and comply with the law. He's just restating the things that were said in the community post. And obviously, US law doesn't require anyone to, to censor any kind of texts. We actually don't know where users live, so we don't just look at US law. Most civilized countries don't have a law that prohibits inappropriate situations that involve minors. But there are a few countries that do prohibit this, and well, for that they use it as a good excuse, supposedly good excuse to censor user stories. We'll comply with deletion requests regardless of where people live. I mean, I strongly doubt that any government will request any kind of deletion regardless of where people live. But we'll keep reading. Obviously, law is not limited to the location a company is based. I understand this. No company really wants to get in trouble. I'm curious how this will actually affect AI Dungeon's earnings. The people will keep talking about it on Reddit. And Alan hopefully says that it's very small. hopefully saying that it will not affect it. And here's a lot of joy emojis under this, laughing at his words, at his hopeful words. I really understand him. He hoped things would go well, and they are just not going well. They couldn't do their job properly, they didn't make a right decision, and now they can't deal with the consequences. Surprisingly accurate. Yes, most people were just using a prompt to play the medieval stories without using the world's feature. Now here's some more emotional reactions. I mean, clearly in the first days, right after the controversy, they could not react peacefully and rationally, and they still can't, I think, because, and I think, to be honest, I have to say, I think they really should take their time before they release the next community post. Oh yeah, here's more emotional reaction. Will revert change after 100 million more memes? This makes me sad, because this is honestly just a toxic reaction to people. He doesn't realize that he is the developer. He is a guy that people actually look up to. He is a developer and a co-founder. He just decides to go down there, walk amongst people and talk to them if he was one of them. But no, he's a responsible person. He's supposed to be responsible. He's supposed to give responsible, rational answers. And he doesn't care, because clearly, I understand him, his emotions are taking over here. I'm sorry, Alan Walton, if you're watching, but I mean, I just have to comment on your emotions here. I just really like memes, even more emotions. Will probably take a day or two. Well, that's clearly not the case. I mean, it is going to take quite some time, and as I mentioned before, it's going to take them a few weeks before things actually calm down. Because, I mean, honestly, this controversy attracted a lot of new users to the AI Dungeon game, but of course, I don't think it will really even out. The AI Dungeon itself, the game, will be losing users and subscribers. They do have to comply with TOS. I mean, that's a debatable statement. They say they have to comply with OpenAI terms of service, and most people believe that it is not the case. I mean, I don't really have a reason to not believe Alan Walton on this. He is the co-founder and he has to comply, because, I mean, it doesn't matter if he has to do it according to law or contract. I mean, if he's using their code, so I mean, he kind of has to. Doesn't matter if there is law or contract there. There probably isn't any contract, but there is a subservient relationship between them and OpenAI developer team. Yes, and here's again, here he's trying to disprove the original poster that said that they don't have to comply with OpenAI terms of service. They were mistaken, yes. He's just denying everything. I mean, I'm not the one to say anything. I don't have any particular insight to this. I mean, we can't know anything because it involves too many people. But if I had to say, I mean, he's probably in the right here. I'm pretty sure OpenAI has the power to force AI Dungeon to do what they want, even if there is no contract or law that forces them to do exactly what they have to. Oh, here's more emotional reactions. Haha, right? Too bad I have no desire for power. He doesn't have any power. I mean, he has the power over the game. He has the power to upset a lot of people or to make them happy. I mean, he himself is probably not the only responsible person here. He took on the role of a PR person. He is just walking here amongst mortals, talking to normal people, explaining the situation quite emotionally. And I feel sorry for his decision. We are expecting to lose some subscribers here. Well, this is sort of contradicting the previous statement that it will impact, you know, earnings. And I kind of speculate that around 1/4 of people that were subscribed now are unsubscribed. To be honest, I myself am considering unsubscribing. I really love the game. I really love playing it, playing all sorts of different scenarios. Sometimes just having conversations with an AI, because honestly, it convinces you that it is conscious so well. But even I am now considering unsubscribing. You know why? Because the game is freaking broken. It simply just doesn't work anymore. Let's keep reading. Much longer, around a week. So yeah, here we are comparing this crisis to the energy crisis, when AI Dungeon developers decided to introduce energy as a form of, you know, limiting player time. Giving people an opportunity to pay a bit more to play with the AI. And I mean, honestly, this is not comparable at all. Energy crisis is absolutely nothing compared to this crisis. I mean, you get service, you have to pay for it, right? This is not a crisis at all. This, however, is something that's just absolutely ridiculous. Clearly, he is mistaken in this situation. Let's keep reading. No, we just move fast, which means more feature but fewer patch notes sometimes. So yeah, they just don't often reach out to people and explain exactly what they're doing. If you want, you can read more and, you know, extrapolate exactly what we're talking about here. We'll keep learning what needs more communication and what needs less. Well, clearly, this thing, you could spin it in a different direction. You could have just implemented a somewhat vague censorship statement and not communicated exactly what is happening to the community, and then you could have avoided this disaster. But you decided to be straightforward and in fact mistaken. You decided to present this broken feature, this broken filter as a part of the game that's going to stay here forever, because it apparently has a good reason to stay forever, to keep breaking the game, which they cannot debug anymore. They cannot debug this feature. Energy surprised us too. Yes, Energy Crisis surprised them too a little bit. I mean, they're always surprised because they clearly have a really positive outlook on everything that they do. Which is, of course, inevitably diluted. You can't be positive about anything in 2021. Sorry, that's a bad joke. I think we might have read through most of the comments. No, wait. Here's some more. Only when we have to. No other way around it, really. I worked in healthcare for years. View things very similarly here. I mean, here Alan is trying to relate to the society. I mean, I really understand him. Sometimes there is no way around it. In his eyes, I mean, it's worth it that the community has to be outraged, has to disagree with this removal of personal freedom. And I really get him. I mean, I'm at a loss for words sometimes. I can't always comment on this. Would you like 600 patch notes per week? Got to draw the line somewhere. Still figuring out exactly where. To be honest, I would love more patch notes. I would personally love that. And I'm pretty sure the society would love a lot more patch notes too. I guess they just don't have the time to outline exactly what they're doing. Thanks, Knight. I mean, this is... Yes, here he's talking about how there's more numbers of developers and everyone... And they are developing new company. They are growing. People are having some communication issues among developers. But hopefully they will become a more solidified team and be able to communicate with each other better and bring features that don't take 1,000 years to debug. Clearly this last feature is just broken AF, if you'll excuse my French. Let's keep reading. That's a big post. We're definitely listening, can't respond to everything, too much, all at once. I mean, in this crisis, the better option for them would be not to respond to most of this, or to most suggestions. We're in great shape, not worried at all here. Well, I hope they are not worried, because if I was in their shoes, I would have torn all the hair from my head. I would have gone absolutely neurotic. Absolutely have to change as you grow, but we have to stay true to our core values, which is... Well, we talked about it in the first video when we read the community post. No, they're just optimized for a low false positive rate. I'm sorry, but this is just BS. This feature is broken. Currently, the AI is broken. It's not completely broken. It's still playable to a degree, but every day I just can't handle it anymore. I can't handle the game, but I have to click the replay 1,000 times, or I have to go back 2 or 3 posts every 5 posts. So basically take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. That's how the game feels right now. They still can't fix it. They still can't debug the feature. Not sure. Lots of edge cases still. Yeah, well, you can say that again, brother. We love the neutrals. Clearly they love the neutrals, but there are no neutrals. There are literally no neutrals in this crisis. There are no people in between. There are people who either don't know anything, or there are people who have taken a point position. Most of the people, I would say, most of the community of AI Dungeon players, they absolutely are on the side of free speech and the lack of censorship. And they are really not on the side of implementing a broken feature. Yeah, here's another large post, you can read it. Thanks, appreciate the positivity. A lot of people are positive about it, but not everyone. If it's not sexual, I'd expect it to be fine, so definitely use the report feature if you hit the filters. And guess what? You hit the filters way too often. I'm sorry, but you just do. But here's another emotional reaction. I'm sorry for Alan, he doesn't really deserve to be abused like that. I mean, he just made a decision, but he doesn't deserve to feel that. Yeah, I wish I could say that we'll only ever look at the black cases, you know, really black kind of stuff, really inappropriate kind of stuff. But realistically, there will always be cases on the edge that we'll have to consider. Doesn't matter where that edge is. That will always be true. I'm sorry, but it does matter where that edge is, because that's the difference between freedom and the totalitarian control, you know? That's the difference between control and freedom. You either control people or you let them do what they want. And you have to define that edge, exactly where it is. So it does matter where that edge is, where the difference is between appropriate and inappropriate is. Probably the wrong wording on my part, I should say really clear cases. Well, instead of black cases. Yes, that's a perma-delete if you do really inappropriate stuff. Oh, the adventure will be permanently deleted if the developers will find really inappropriate stuff in there. That's why a lot of people are leaving. People do like playing with really inappropriate stuff. They just do. They like to live out their fantasies in this game. And people now are reading their personal adventures, and after it's been flagged, and are just deleting left and right, supposedly banning some people. But what about the scope of content you're filtering for? Can you say with any amount of confidence that won't expand significantly? Or are there already talks on the table? My spidey senses tell me that there have been, and my spidey senses are usually right. In terms of values, we are focused on empathy and exploration. We value both, so we want maximum freedom with maximum empathy, as much as possible. I mean, this can be interpreted in many different ways, but they really want the game to feel like that, empathy and exploration. They want there to be curious, interesting, relatable characters, and they want the world to feel interesting and details. This is what they're focusing on. They don't want to. Apparently this is their primal goals, to develop a game with maximum empathy and exploration. Basically, it would be similar to Bethesda games, which just are in their core beautiful, curious exploration games, but they will also have curious, you know, characters like in Mass Effect, where you have relatable characters and such, or New Vegas. I love New Vegas. Let's keep reading. What are the black areas? We really don't want to discuss it. Just the ones in the blog post. Basically, the most inappropriate kind of stuff. There's something that would be qualified as CP. Means we care about people. Specific examples at latitude.io/about. Maximum empathy. They care about people and they want characters to feel. It's not actually about characters. It's about representation of different parts of the society, different underrepresented minorities being and taking a significant portion of the game, you know? It's about representation in the game. Not the best day, but an important one. I get him, but man, I feel so sorry for him. I feel so sorry for his and their decision. And I don't completely agree with it, to be fair. I wish I could make a version of AI Dungeon for my kids to play. People who don't realize Google and Facebook tries. I'm sorry, but when you refer to Google and Facebook argument, you just lost the argument. It's like mentioning Hitler. No, you don't have the right to track it just because Google and Facebook do. You don't have the right to do it just because they do. You either have to own up to the situation or to hide and say that you don't. I mean, either one is okay as long as people are calm, right? What, Google tracks me? Oh my god, I need to get out of the internet. I mean, I get pissed off that Google tracks me. Sometimes I don't want him to listen to the things I say. And sometimes he literally does that. He literally guesses my thoughts. What a curious algorithm that is. I mean, clearly Google doesn't guess my thoughts, but let's keep moving. This is already a really emotional video. It's a really long part. I mean, if you want, you can skip through it, but clearly people need emotional reaction to it. People want to have someone who will say something about it. And that's gonna be me. Here's Frogging 101. Can I get a recap of our Latitude last 2 weeks? So yes, big thanks to the user Frogging 101 and everyone who helped him gather this information. And now we can move on to the next part. So this is the ending part. Here's me taking a look at another nice post. Something really argumentative. A lot of people agree with it. Latitude can and will read your private stories. The filter doesn't work. That's the number one issue that I have. The filter breaks the freaking game. There's a good post by the terrible_ID_dude. It's a really good post. The standards are unclear, just like Alan Walton says. It doesn't matter where the edge is. It doesn't. I'm sorry, but it has to matter. That's the difference between good and bad stuff. The edge is the difference between good and bad. Awful communication. I'm sorry, but it is. Alan, I'm sorry. The hack isn't really such a big issue, but what's bad is that AI Dungeon developers, Latitude, they did not acknowledge that. Proof of incompetence. I mean, I'm sorry to criticize the developers who clearly are doing a good job. They are trying hard, but man, this feature is a real hit in the guts, a real kick in the guts, you know? Saying, have no obligation. Well, they sort of do have an obligation, it's just that it's not really a definite obligation. I mean, I don't really agree with this part. They sort of do have an obligation. Censorship is generally a bad thing. I agree, generally it is a bad thing. But some censorship has to happen. It was the AI, not me. Well, I hope they can define. I hope the developers and the moderators can define the difference between the AI input suggesting that she was 17 years old. And it doesn't help anybody. I mean, it helps some people, but clearly, Latitude made a really hard decision, and now they have to pay for it. And here's another mention. Apparently, according to some unconfirmed rumors, AI Dungeon, over the last few years, and very recently as well, developed a very large sum of money, millions of dollars from investors, because the investors either want to move on with a new project, or they perhaps want to make AI Dungeon itself into a more profitable business. We don't know, we just don't have enough information. Maybe I will cover it in the next video, the details regarding the investors. Or maybe I'll pin this in the comments or in the description. Either way, this video is over. I strongly suggest you go to Reddit, go to these posts, go to these users, and reread them, read the comments to just form your own opinion. My video is great. It's great to be able to communicate with someone who has an opinion, but I strongly suggest you go to these users, to go to their pages and read these posts yourself, you know? And here you can find some more information. Stuff that I read in the first part of the video. I don't have anything to cut out from the video, so I guess I'll just put it all together and upload it. We'll see each other again. I will see you in the next video when hopefully Latitude posts another community post so we can discuss it all together. Anyway, now this video is over. It's been Sparkfinger. Bye for now.